Watch this video and I'll show you how I made this awesome bed in a single weekend. And if you're really ambitious, you can make 2. For this project, I bought all my materials from one of the big box stores. I bought 1 box of 2.5-inch wood screws. I bought 9 2x4s. I needed 5 2x6s. And I had material left over. And with 2 beds, I used a total of about a half a gallon of paint. Step number 1, build a frame. The frame consists of a simple box put together with 2x6s. I then attached runners for the supports. And then for the legs, some more 2x6s. The first thing I like to do is just lay out all my lumber. I kind of see what I'm dealing with. Then I like to rough cut it. What I mean by rough cut is within an inch or so of the final size, but not exact. Now that I've rough cut all my lumber, I'm going to go ahead and cut it to exact size. For the smaller pieces, I can just go ahead and do that right on the table saw. Gets me perfect, consistent results. And then for the longer pieces, I had to utilize the chop saw. I didn't get a good video of this because all the video I had of my chop saw was just of my back, but next time hopefully I get a little better video. Before assembly, I made the smart decision to go ahead and sand all my wood with 100 grit sandpaper, and you can see all the pieces there. That is the frame, and to attach the frame together I use pocket hole screws. There's kind of a mixed opinion of pocket hole screws, but I think in the right situation they can work perfectly, and if you're a beginner woodworker, I highly recommend it. I'm just going to attach the legs with screws, but I counterboard each one of the holes with a 3/8 inch drill bit. So then when I screw in each screw, I'm going to put it about a 1/4 inch into the wood and then fill each one of those holes with a 3/8 inch dowel. For my runners, I just ripped a 2x4 in half and attached it with screws to the frame. And then once I got that in place, I could cut out all of my supports. And I'm not exactly sure how many supports I needed, but I just put in what I thought would be enough. To clean up those dowels, I just utilized an angle grinder. Should have used a pole saw, but I don't have a pole saw, so I just used that angle grinder and then cleaned it up with my sander. Step number 2, it's time for a headboard. The headboard has 3 separate pieces. Here's the first piece. Technically, this is a headboard, but it's time to make this headboard awesome. I utilize pocket holes for the entire headboard portion of the build. You'll see in a second here how this frame goes together, but ultimately I'm going to cut a rabbet in the back portion of this headboard. So this is me just marking out where that rabbet will go to make sure I cut on the right side of my boards. I used a table saw to make the rabbet. It was pretty easy for the long sides. For the short side, I couldn't make a through cut, so it was a little tougher, but I came back and just cleaned it up with a chisel. That's my buddy Jeff, came over and helped out in this portion of the build. I utilized a table saw for a decorative chamfer, but the star of this headboard is going to be a beautiful piece of figured walnut I got when I used to live in the state of Wisconsin. I cut the board in half and then needed to glue it together to make a panel. You could use biscuits or just glue, but I used my Festool domino to get that seam nice and tight. Then it goes into the clamps and you gotta hope for the best. My sanding regimen is really simple. I start with 100 grit and I sand and I sand and I sand, and then once it starts to feel good with 100 grit, I come in with 180 grit. Then once it's starting to feel good with 180 grit, I'll go to 220 grit. Once it's starting to feel good with 220 grit in my random orbital sander, I'll just use something around 300 with just my hand so I can really feel any imperfections in the wood. Once I'm done sanding, I'll spray it off with my air compressor and then pour on mineral spirits and a rag just to get all that dust off, to get it nice and clean and ready for some finish. I have an external frame and I have my original frame. Step 3. Now we need to paint and finish. I use General Finishes Armor Seal for this project. It's a great wiping varnish. Basically just put it on with a rag. Let the wood soak up quite a bit, and then just start using long strokes to leave a nice thin layer. And then I'll come back the next day. First thing I'll do is sand it just with my hand and a piece of sandpaper with 320 grit. And then I'll blow it off with the air compressor, clean it again with some mineral spirits, and then add another coat. And ultimately, I think I did 4 or 5 coats, just following that same regimen. Finishing can be intimidating. It can also be hard work, but once you start getting good results and you're utilizing good wood and good finishes, it's a lot of fun. Here's my better half painting the bed a fun lime green. I think she did a total of 3 coats. Sometimes we sand between coats. This time we just used some paste wax or furniture wax at the end so it was nice and soft to the touch. One trick we found that we've been utilizing recently is instead of using paint brushes, we use these nice rollers, and we've gotten a lot better results because of it. I hope you enjoyed the project. It has a unique look to it. The headboard is very customizable. I also think if you don't have a piece of walnut, you could easily use some tongue and groove paneling. You could also use some wainscoting. Even a piece of painted plywood I think could look really unique. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please share it with a friend. Can you guys jump higher?
Let's jump really high.
No pushing.